time. So I want to thank you all for joining us. It's great to have each one of you here for this masterclass. We are thrilled to be here, reflecting on the many ways in which the arts are so integral for the work that we do and the social change we are striving for. We have four wonderful speakers today. I'm going to briefly introduce them and review the layout of the morning before I hand the microphone over to each one. Our first speaker is well known to everyone, Dr. Bruce Miller, who holds the A.W. and Mary Margaret Clausen Distinguished Professorship in Neurology at UC San Francisco, where he directs the Memory and Aging Center and is, as you all likely know, one of the founding directors of GBHI. He will frame for us why the arts are so powerful for the work we are all trying to accomplish. The next two speakers are Global Atlantic Fellows, Josh Kornbluth, an Atlantic Fellow from 2016, our intrepid first cohort, who is a performer and writer and filmmaker and film and video maker. And Alex Kornhuber, an Atlantic Fellow from the 2018 cohort, who is a phenomenal photographer. They will introduce themselves and their work and then lead us on an impromptu and collaborative riff, demonstrating how they can bring us along into the arts while building from one another's work to create a greater whole. After this, we will have a breakout session and then our question and answer time. At the very end, Nick Johnson, Associate Professor of Drama at Trinity and our new Arts and Health lead for GBHI Trinity, will add his concluding thoughts on the session today. And just before starting, I want to give a big thanks to Mary Warbelow for her technology support for this event. So let's get started. I'd like to hand this over to Bruce Miller.
Thank you. What an exciting morning for those of us in the United States. For some of you, it's evening. I remember back to 2016 when we took our first class at GBHI. We really were, I think, much in the dark about where our interaction between artists and scientists would go. I think with that early class, we had incredible leadership. Dominic Campbell, Josh Kornbluth, Alex Kornhuber, and it began, I think, a journey that has emerged in a way that I never could have imagined. There's this concept in science of emergent properties, and the idea goes something like this. If you put together really amazing, competent, and diverse people who are open, that this leads to products that are way beyond what you ever imagine when you get started. And I really feel that this has been true of our arts program. I think it is challenged science, made us more aware about some of the fallacies that we have when we think about caring for people with neurodegenerative diseases. It has given us great hope in the intersection between the arts and science, and that is, we're starting to realize that if we can engage elders in the arts, of the quality that our GBHI fellows have offered, that it can change their lives, it can change the lives of their caregivers. And I think when you say change lives, you're talking about changing brains. And this is something that I don't think we ever really imagined when we started. And then there's another aspect of this that I also think we didn't realize when we started, and that is that our artists tell our story much better than we scientists do. And so when you watch Alex Kornhuber with a photographic journalism show the effect of COVID in rural urban Peru, I think it's worth 1,000 studies. Immediately you see the vulnerable in big cities, the systems that are set up in rural environments to protect people, and you could spend many millions of dollars on research studies, but with Alex's eye, you see immediately what we are doing, what we're doing wrong, what we're doing right. With Josh, there are very many examples of what he has done in a magnificent way. The first one that we worked on together was the empathy circuit. It's a phrase that I now use routinely. I think it's changed the way we in science think about how the brain is organized to touch and heal other people. And so I think without bringing an artist with an incredibly great sense of humor and an amazing eye, I think the science would have never come to the stage that it's at now. So I will be with you for quite a bit of the morning. In New York. I wish I could be for the whole event, but Mindy and others will tell me, what happened during the day. So I'm going to pass this back to Mindy, and thank you for letting me talk today.
Thank you, Bruce. That was wonderful and gets us all excited, more excited about our two speakers. I'll hand it over to Alex.
Thank you, Mindy. Thank you, Bruce, for kind words. Beautiful. So, for those that know me, I'm a documentary photographer, and I focus my work on a wide range of human stories, such as war, celebration, or political revolt, manual labor, aging. In the end, it's all about everyday life. And I think the skills that I've been practicing throughout my career would definitely include capturing emotions under very difficult circumstances, and especially in a very intimate and truthful manner. And also for those that know me, maybe those that were in my cohort, you can definitely know that at first, GBHI, in GBHI, I felt very intimidated. I felt very intimidated about working with scientists and trying to understand what my role might be there. And it took a while. It took a very long while before I realized that I wasn't there to become a scientist. I thought, this is what's happening to me now. I'm going to be a scientist, but not really. And over time, I think I have come to the conclusion that the following three things have become very clear to me. Number one, I would say that my purpose now is to use science to inform my work. This is a very important aspect of my work now. Number two, maybe, I hope that my work can help scientists see their work differently. And number three, I think certainly I can help scientists communicate important messages about brain health in society, like Bruce mentioned. And what's beautiful, I think, it's that the process of these three things happening is a very dynamic and an ongoing interaction. And it's also a very enriching opportunity for me to work with people with different skills and backgrounds. So here now, Josh and I are going to try to demonstrate a little bit of that process of collaboration, maybe with some pictures and some improvisation. I don't really know how this is going to go, Josh. I hope we are going to be working together on this one. I love that Josh brings an element of surprise that is very unknown in the world of science. So I just have one question before I change it to Josh. A question for everybody. It's a very simple question. Do you believe in magic? And I don't mean tricks. It's more about the flow of grace. For me, it's about the command of the elements to capture people's hearts. So Josh.
Alex, that was beautiful. I have a question on my screen from Zoom saying, do I want to stop entering full screen mode when someone else shares their screen? Yes or no? I don't know if anyone else has this question on their screen. It is too heavy a question to ask me. I'm just too confused by this question by Zoom. And I don't know whether to say no or yes, because if I say one and it's the wrong one, it's going to foreclose the other one. And then maybe I won't see people. So I'm going to give up on that. I'm just going to leave it on the screen for now. No, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no and see it. Okay, just nothing happened. Okay, cool. Excellent. So, Alex, that was really beautiful. That I just want to acknowledge that photograph, that poster, is just so gorgeous and it luminous. And then the words on it with the arrows, it raises all of these dichotomies and questions and tensions. I also want to acknowledge that Alex and I have very similar names, Kornhuber and Kornbluth. And we don't know if that's why we were chosen to be the two people who spoke. You know, that they just wanted some, you know, maybe that we could be together. If you could put our screens together, we could combine us into Kornhuber Bluth or Hubert Korn. Well, whatever. But for whatever reason that we're chosen, I'm really honored. I'm really honored. I'm I guess a performer, mostly a storyteller. I used to be just a proofreader at a newspaper when I was younger, and then I performed at a going away party where I played one of the older editors, and then people like laughed, and then I thought, wow, this is more fun than correcting people's spelling and punctuation. And so eventually I became a storyteller, and I do solo shows about my life. And I've been doing that for over 30 years, mostly supporting myself by touring around the country and sometimes around the world. And a lot of the focus of my stories, well, a lot of it is about my parents and especially about my father. My father was this larger than life character who was a communist, and he told me that I was going to lead a communist revolution in the United States since I was a little boy. He told me I was going to lead a revolution. And this was in the 1960s when the revolution seemed just around the corner. So I assumed that this was really going to happen. And I've spent the rest of my life, I'm now almost 65, like trying to figure out how come I didn't lead the revolution, and is it my fault? And should I have led the revolution? But one of the things that I started to learn about myself as I became a fellow is that it was that actually I was being a scientist. I was being a scientist the whole time that I was telling stories. And I found that out because of Bruce Miller who introduced us. I remember when I went into Bruce Miller's office in 2016, I had just heard about that there was this brain program at UCSF that was happening, and I didn't know what it was. And I went in to meet with him, and he told me that there was this thing that was starting to called the Global Brain Health Institute. And I told him, I said, well, you should know, Bruce, that I flunked all of my science classes in college. And so, and he said, fantastic. You know, so that's where I started to learn that if Bruce Miller sees something in you, there's almost no way to escape it. There's almost no way out of it, and that you should give in. You should give in to it. The next thing that I discovered once I applied and then got in was that, or that I tried to figure out, which Alex has alluded to, is, well, what is my place as a storyteller in this science and medicine place? What do I do? And at first, I was struggling, and I've talked to Alex, and we can maybe talk about this, but I was struggling to figure out, well, how do I, as an artist, as a storyteller, how do I fit in to, how do I apply for a pilot project? How do I apply for a pilot project where it says I'm supposed to like have a lab or something? And so I started like asking my other cohort people who were scientists and doctors, well, how do I do this? I guess I have to do a double-blind study. How do I do a double-blind study? And then I realized a little bit that I would be a horrible failure as a scientist, as I always knew. But what I could be, all that I could do, was do what I do, which is tell stories. But it was more than that, there was a point of intersection that I felt with GBHI, and I could feel it with the scientists and I could feel it with the doctors. And that had to do with justice, with fighting for justice. I had never seen, for example, I'd never seen the population of people who have dementia and their caregivers, especially those who aren't super wealthy and don't have resources, but all of them. I had not seen them as people who are suffering and who lack agency and who lack support. And it's certainly in my country, lack government support, lack economic support. I hadn't seen that before. And I hadn't felt how my story could somehow, I hadn't seen how somehow my stories could connect with the medical issues that people were going through, and how the medical issues were connected to the political issues, which were connected to the social issues. And then I had to figure out, how could I tell my stories in such a way that they included both the science that I was learning and also the things that animate me, which is talking about the people that I have loved, the people that I love, to talk about my family members, to talk about my friends, to talk about how much I miss my dad. The reason I became a storyteller is because my dad had a stroke when I was in my 20s, my early 20s. I was 20 actually. And I didn't even realize until I was having a conversation with Dr. Sergio Lanata, one of the faculty members at UCSF. I didn't even realize that what my father had had after his stroke was a kind of dementia, was a vascular dementia. I didn't realize how this was all connected in my life. So this idea of revolution, of social change, of making our society better, about working together, combined with my emotions about my father and my longing for him, my missing him now for most of my life. And it also gave me a sense, in learning about the empathy circuit that Bruce alluded to, that Bruce talked about, this idea that empathy, as I learned in my didactics, is the thing that is the most human about us. And that we have this circuit in our brains that generates empathy. And then when that leapt into an idea, which I had while sitting in on watching brain scans, that I saw a brain scan as a political map of the United States. And I thought, oh, we have a collective brain and it has a broken empathy circuit and we need to fix it. And how can I tell stories? How can I try to tell stories to communicate that? And so I hope in this sort of jumble of words that I've begun with, that I can give an impression about how my experience of becoming a GBHI fellow took what I had been doing, talking about myself on stage, and what I was experiencing, which was our politics falling apart in my country or becoming very dire, at the same time as being surrounded by the reality of dementia for people who suffer from it, for those who care for them, that this all started to come together and inform what I do and who I am. I think I just went three hours over. I'm sorry. I'm not quite sure if I fit into the outline at all.
Well, if I can add something to Josh, and we met there in the second floor in this little round tables and in this building outside of Dr. Virginia Storm's office.
Yes.
That was
in the Sandler building, for those
Sandler
who've been in San
building, and
Francisco.
we were both looking for information and a way to connect and a way to find out what our mission or goal, what we're doing in this place. And I cherish a lot our conversations, especially as we were both waiting to meet with Virginia Storm. And I always felt that you have a way of communicating certain messages, and sometimes those messages can be sad, difficult, messages that we don't want to hear, but you found a way of doing it with humor. And I think that helps people engage. And so those things that you communicate, and so most people want to put those things away. Like, you don't want to talk about this. Like, you kind of put it under the rug or something like this. You know, I have experience in my own family, and maybe some of you might have the same experience. We don't want to talk about these things. We're ashamed, we're uncomfortable, we don't know how to do it. And I always felt that, you know, you found a way to do it with humor. You found a way to do it that with empathy. I mean, you're a master of empathy. And I mean, I try to do that the same with my pictures. And, you know, I feel that we were not able to do it alone, you know. And that's the reason why we're standing outside Virginia Storm's office. We you know, we're both thirsty for information. And that sees us now sitting here. After so after so many years, here we are still kicking.
Yeah, we're sitting instead of sitting around those little tables. Those tables at the Sandler Center were very well situated, I found. Well, for one thing, because we fellows at the time, I don't know how it's set up now, but the fellows were also scrunched into this little tiny office.
Yeah.
So it was really hard. And I didn't realize that apparently when I'm like writing or even reading, that I hum, like I go, like that. And when you're sitting with just a bunch of fellows, especially young fellows, you know, who have really good hearing, they really hear it. And I remember Elisa Rezende from Brazil, who's one of my dear friends from the first cohort. I should go, Josh, you're making noises while you're working. I said, okay. So then I would go out. So it was nice to be out those little tables, because then you were out at this sort of echoey place. But the other nice thing about being situated there, which is also near Dr. Virginia Sturm's office, as you mentioned, is that it was also on the pathway to and from the bathrooms. So when people, so people had to go past us essentially. And so so typically you could like see someone coming by, you know, like Jen Yokoyama, and go, oh, hey, Jen, can I talk to you? You say, well, yeah, Josh, can I just, I said, okay, I'll get you on the way back. And then, you know, but it would lead to these like really beautiful experiences. And that was one of the things that I just thought was so powerful, was being able to interact, as I did with you and as I did with other cohort members, and just run into each other, just be able to run into each other, just be able to run into other people too, including other people who just sort of work there, people in the business office and stuff like that. And that was really important. And I remember there was one really beautiful thing. I was trying to figure out genetics, and I just want to say I haven't yet figured out genetics, but Jen was talking to me about, you know, genes and how, what's the kind of thing where, you know, where genes, some adjustment in your genes can be passed down through generations, you know. And she stopped by and told me this beautiful story about how her father, who was this great artist, had passed, but when she was pregnant with her son, but that her son, she realized, because she knew genetics, she knew that part of her father was actually in her son, who was growing in her, because she was so sad that they wouldn't get to meet. And that's just, you don't think of having such a moving and beautiful experience, a conversation, when you're in a place like that, you know. And I also, I want to say, Alex, I had a profound experience, as I think I've mentioned to you, when I think it's when I first sort of started to know your work and you better. There was a salon at which you made a presentation in which you showed a number of pictures from your travels, one of your travels around, or some of your travels around Peru. And I remember this combination of the pictures, and I believe you'll show someone pictures here, you know, today, now, but they were both so beautiful aesthetically. They were so imbued with empathy, the pictures themselves. And then also in what they depicted, they were so sometimes wrenching, like, you know, that and your presentation of them pulled me out of myself. It pulled me out of myself and this sort of self-centeredness that I have personally, but also this being a citizen of the United States and being a white man, you know, all of these things of just this kind of this being just inside this privilege thing, and then going, this is the world. These are people. These are people. To leave myself, to put myself in some perspective. I don't know. It was just, I found it very powerful, and I couldn't have gotten there, I don't think, without your work and without you.
That's so kind, Josh. We've talked about this before, and I really appreciate the way you feel about my work. And I feel, I mean, I think I love when people respond to my photography, or when people ask to use my photography, you know, it's out there to be used. And I think what you were talking about, you know, like, you know, this little tables there in the Sandler, it's about putting yourself in the path of knowledge in a way, right? Like, you have to be there to receive it, to intercept the people that are coming through and to and for the bathroom, for example, or the offices. This is somehow a natural way of interfering with knowledge. You got to put yourself out there, I think. I know for me, my journey, you know, and also your work, Josh, you know, we can talk about didactics all you want. I remember with a lot of humor how you talked about them, just the way you say it about them. But you found a way of explaining things to me immediately that I just didn't grasp in didactics, you know, like empathy, or just by watching your shows. So it is a highway, right? You need to be there. You need to be there, I think. I mean, for me, GBHI is this amazing highway where all this knowledge from everywhere, from all different walks of life and different countries and different backgrounds and professions are coming together under, like, say, one umbrella, which is, you know, to learn a little bit more about neurodegenerative diseases, perhaps aging. Actually, there's a lot that we can learn about, but is that interaction, you know, it's this highway. Luckily, you will be, you know, crashing against somebody who will just open up your world. So that to me has influenced the way I photograph, for sure. The way I focus, you know, I go out to make pictures looking for something. I want to show how people aging are functioning, you know, functional, or there are so many concepts that as a photographer, I guess you never do them, you know. Like, I don't know, we're looking at some pictures like this lady going up the hill, the way older adults can be so functioning. So I think somehow, Josh, you and I, we share a lot of the same. Our professions are so uncertain, and they depend so much on chance. But I think we've been able to inform our work. Would you say that, Josh, that we have been able to inform our work? Our work has been informed by science a little bit more?
I think absolutely. And then what was really beautiful to me, I mean, at one point I went into Bruce's office and I just sort of said, I just feel like I'm getting so much out of it. I want to give back. You know, I'm getting so much out of this experience. And then he assured me, as he said in his beautiful comments introducing us, that he felt that we, the artists, brought this, you know, that we brought something to the science. We actually bring something to the science, which made me feel great.
Yeah. That's an interesting concept. How do we give back, right? Like, I feel I've been given so much at GBHI, my whole journey through GBHI, and how do we give back? I mean, you know, I try to stay as connected as possible, and I share all, you know, everything that I do I love to share. Like, how do you give back to, have you asked yourself? I mean, you just said that. How do we give back? I think
Well,
that's a question.
I'd love to hear perhaps later when people join us, as I hope they will,
Yeah.
to hear from scientists and to hear from doctors and to
Mhm.
see how the arts help them and maybe how we can help them more.
Mm. And
I-
go ahead, John.
Now, one of the things that we talked about is that I just wanted to, and I don't know if this is a good time to start doing it, is to just to try to express improvisationally what happens if Mindy, assuming you're doing that, can you hold that picture there for a second, or for a few seconds, is to do like what to try to simulate what happens in my mind when I see something that you've done, like a picture like that. So for example, I look at this picture and I can see how this inspires me in so many ways, like what it sparks in me. And one thing it sparks in me is, of course, I think about with the mask, I think about COVID, and I think about the incredible challenges that we have in our society, both medically, but then to a tremendous amount, politically, with dealing with something that is so dependent on that has so much to do with what we all inevitably share, the thing that we all breathe the same air, and that we all, what else goes out into the air. And it also shows me this incredible care, this incredible tenderness that I feel that I'm seeing in the posture of these two men here. And I'm also, I think, because the older man he's reminding me of my grandpa. And so this is also evoking in me my grandfather, Julius, who grew up as a peasant himself, in a Jewish ghetto in a shtetl in Russia, and then came over to the United States when he was a young man, and started selling hardware from a cart, and then became a hardware salesman and was selling hardware all around New York City until his late 90s. And then this is also my grandpa, who lived to 103. So when we think about aging, I also think about, this is someone who I knew all the way up until that age, and he was absolutely lucid until almost the very end. And so as I get older myself, and I'm almost 65 now, when I look at this man, I also think about my grandpa, and I think about, well, will I make it that far? Will I make it that far? And will I be as lucid as he was? And will I continue to be able to work as hard as he did? And then, because I'm also still looking at these two people and this younger man caring for this older man here, I'm also thinking of my mother, who passed away just almost exactly a year ago, and who was in a facility, a really wonderful facility in Chicago, but she was there during the time of COVID, when all of these older people were isolated. And she was fortunate enough to be able to have care. But I think that isolation, one of the things I learned as a fellow, is how social connection is one of the huge important factors in brain health. And then this continues to get maybe even more and more important as we get older. And so I'm thinking about how I wasn't able to be with her during that time. And then, I don't know, Alex, even to me, the chairs, you have those two shiny sort of plastic chairs and that one sort of cushiony chair. And the chairs, even to me, their emptiness, or I want the older man to get to sit in that comfortable chair. I want the younger man, and the younger man, he's probably younger than me, but still he's not that young, to be able to guide him. And all of these things are evoked in this. That just is the beginning of my emotions and my thoughts as I look at this one photograph. And now I'm very curious to ask you, what was happening in this photograph? Who are these people?
Well, the elder gentleman, Victor, he's suffering from dementia. He's experiencing Alzheimer's. And so he was cared for by his wife, who passed away early on in the COVID years. And so his son had to step in, take care of him. And their house was under construction while all of this was happening. And Mr. Victor, he was very distressed. I think we all know that the lockdown made life really hard for everybody, and especially people experiencing dementia or Alzheimer's in this case. So Victor had been a construction worker all his life. And so he would spend a great deal of time moving furniture around. And his son will try to make him stop doing that. And he would just say, stop, just sit down, don't move the chairs, right? And I was just, I had visited him in 4 years. I would probably go 3 times a year for 3 or 4 years. I visited them. And I got to see the decline of Victor and throughout the pandemic. But then, the son who's caring for his father, and all he could say to me is like, why isn't there a pill to make him better? Like, where's the pill? Like, when is somebody going to come with the pill to make him better? Like, I cannot sleep. He doesn't sleep. I cannot sleep. I cannot work. I lost my job. He just wants to move chairs around all day and is messing up the fresh concrete on the walls. And it's affecting their lives in ways that it goes beyond what you imagine, right? I just didn't have all the answers to all of his questions, and especially the magic pill, right? I felt it was devastating to tell him there is no such thing, right? There is no such thing. And I think GBHI prepared me for a lot. But I don't know. What do you think? What do you think, Josh? Have you ever been in a situation like where you've been, as an artist, had to give advice on a family member who's suffering with somebody with dementia, and you're trying to pull back all the information that you've learned and try to help somebody, and you just, I'm just a photographer. And of course, they call me doctor, everybody calls me doctor. I'm not I'm a photographer, I'm like, just because I present myself, I go there with doctors, of course, I'm there with the local neurologist who introduces me to this situation, and then I become the doctor. I'm the doctor, even though I'm taking pictures. And they're expecting a cure for me. So it's really, really, really hard, difficult in the feelings, in the heart.
Yes.
So that's the situation in that picture, right? He's moving chairs, and son is telling him, don't move the chairs, sit down. And I'm thinking, let him move chairs, maybe that will make him feel like he has something to do, something, you know what I mean?
So the chairs are really crucial. The chairs, and I almost talked about the walls as well, because it's so striking, just those plain walls. But Alex, to address your question, yes, absolutely. I mean, I've been making these videos, and doing this solo show that I'm touring with as well about my experiences. And people come up to me a lot, and they write to me as well. And they write to me, and talk to me, just sharing their frustration and grief and questions. And I am able to pass along information and that I know, or handouts, or direct people to doctors and scientists that I know. or their work that I know through being a GBHI fellow. But I think it is, we don't have the answers. Of course we don't. And it's so incredibly hard to hold that. In a way, to me, the situation, and by the way, I just want to say we will be getting to a Q&A period soon, and possibly breakout rooms. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I just want to say that to me, the experience of being around both people with dementia and those treating it and studying it, that experience is like a condensed version of the human experience, of the questions that we can't answer, and of the frustrations that we have, and of the things that we strive for. Alex, I don't know if, I think you did, but if you got to, as I did, sit in on meetings with family members and with patients who come through, in our case, the Memory and Aging Center, right? So they've been through all the tests, which can be very difficult and frustrating for people, especially with, you know, dementia, to have their cognitive tests because it's not working. It's very hard. And then they finally get to talk to the doctors and to the teams and to the nurses. And I remember the first time, and maybe the second time that I was there too, sitting in on these meetings, and I was waiting for what will the doctor say? Because I'm used to, I was sort of hoping the doctor would go, and here's the pill for that. Here's the thing that you do. Here's the protocol. And then you will be cured. And your loved one she'll be returned to the mother, the sister that you had before. And you know it won't happen. And then I would think, well, how will this doctor handle that? And the way that doctors handled it when they spoke was with to me, great humility and great sensitivity and honesty, because they couldn't offer that.
Yeah.
They couldn't even frequently offer the specific information of what it is that this person had, because sometimes you can't find that out, I learned, until after the person has died and the brain has been dissected, or even then, right? So one thing I also that makes me want to acknowledge before I think we go into, I think, whatever we're going to go into next in this session, I want to acknowledge this community, the beauty and the power of this community, the people in this virtual room with us, and the people who are not in this particular meeting. All of us, everyone is passionate about life and finding meaning in life and creating greater meaning and joy and empathy in life. And in doing it with and for people who are particularly being separated, not only from others in the world, but frequently from themselves. And I want to acknowledge just this brilliant collection of people, scientists, epidemiologists, artists, you know, all of us dealing with this deeply, deeply difficult and these passionate issues that to me are at the very center, like the very center of being human. And the fact that we're able to find joy in those situations sometimes, and that we have this community. And I want to encourage the way you and I found each other, we're able to find each other by being placed in this remarkable program. Possibly again, just because they liked our names, but you know, hopefully it worked out. You know, but I want to encourage people to, and maybe they're doing this already, but if not, to really push to connect with people and to get people to connect with you and to reach out. And for those of my fellow everyone, I was gonna say my fellow artists, but just everybody, I was very intimidated for like a long time being a fellow. I was very intimidated by just trying to connect with people because I figured I would sound really stupid. And then I decided that sounding stupid, I would make my calling card, you know, and I try to make that my strength. And so that worked for me, but other things worked for other people. So I know that there's more to come here, and I'm curious about what we're going to do next. Mindy, can you tell us, guide us,
Yes.
please?
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Alex. There was so much said in this time and so much seen. And so we'd like to offer everybody just a quick 8-minute breakout session. Mary's going to put you in small random groupings just to help you digest the highlights of what you've heard. If you want to move with your group, great, laugh, etc. Take bio breaks, get a cup of tea, go ahead. But you're only expected to keep doing all of that, and while discussing some of the key points, some of the ideas that resonate with you, that you're thinking about, and talk about them with your group. We'll ask you to come back at the end of the 8 minutes after you've had this processing time, bring questions, throw in the chat, what your group talked about that was big and made you consider. But use this time, this 8 minutes, to get together, and then we'll have time afterwards for questions for our speakers today. Thank you.
I just want to say, the first time I went into a breakout room, I was worried that I was going to actually leave my body because I didn't know how the breakout room was going to work. And then you actually keep your body, but you probably all know that already.
And bring your bodies back with you when you come back.
Right.
Well, people
Oh, it looks,
are coming back.
yeah, look, Josh, it looks like everybody kept their own bodies in place.
Well, we only know about their heads, really. We
I mean,
don't know.
yeah,
It may be that people got like different people's
different
bodies
bodies and heads.
in the
Very well
transporter room.
Yeah. Need to do
I
a
don't know.
check.
My experience in breakout rooms is that sometimes like you just finally start the interesting part of the conversation. And it goes, the breakout room, you'll be leaving, you'll be expelled from the breakout room in 25 seconds. You go, I just understood what's wrong with the world. And it is as follows. It is, you have 2 seconds. So
Well,
I apologize.
it looks like everybody's back, and we want to say welcome back. And we'd like you to do 2 things. We're going to use the chat for your, so write for your group, what are some of the strong ideas that you heard about or reflected on, and put those into the chat so we can all see what the different groups were speaking about and found poignant from the early part of the morning. And write in any questions as well that you have for the speakers. Or you can turn on your camera and throw them out there, but that turns into a free-for-all. So Jabril's added in first. Jabril is always the first to speak and to write. It's an amazing quality. So
Yeah.
no questions, no comments?
Well, Jibril was kicked out somehow. No, he's
No.
back.
I was just kidding.
Yeah.
The room was closed.
Okay. Okay. Good. All right. And how Jibril, how was your group about collaboration? What does that mean?
It means that we were all discussing about how different groups of people, artists, clinicians, can sit down together and produce something productive for society. Whether it's artistic work, whether it's work in research or working in different settings. And we were talking about the last month's Creative Brain Week in Ireland and how they collaborated and how people met for the first time and how easy it was for them to connect. That was the thing that we heard from our group. Thank you.
I also I see that just a bit of a short time.
And now it's
How
one
are
of the
the
things.
arts to simplify ideas?
Well, I
Wow.
do think. Go ahead.
Wow. evidence-based care and what best care means. Some huge subject matter, Tatiana. Yeah.
Mm.
I'd love to hear more about these things from people who discuss them.
Mm.
It's
Simplify
true,
it.
Danny. You know, there is a lot about human experience that's nonverbal. It's very challenging to me personally, because I try to verbalize everything.
Well, yeah, yes, you do. But I think the way you do, Josh, the way you verbalize things, I think it helps break stigma, which is a wonderful thing. You know, I think my experience, at least with dementia within my family, is that we try to silence things, and the way maybe humor or photography, it helps break the silence, break the stigma, right? Like we have a
Yeah.
way, I think in the arts in general, I mean, I'm not talking about myself, or just, dance, music, any, literature. We express in ways that help break a little bit of the stigma of communication, right?
And then also it elicits for me experiences I had very late in my mother's life when our relationship had been very verbal. You know, she was a writer, and we would talk, and we actually had a hard time communicating for most of my life, talking. And then in the last part of her life, when she had Alzheimer's herself, and we just smiled at each other and held each other's hand.
Mm-hmm.
That nonverbal communication was actually deeper and more eloquent to me than much of what we had said in words. I'm seeing so many fascinating things coming by on the screen here, and I wonder how we can pursue these if people who are writing want to talk about it, or at least I want to read them all. Wow. I'm used to, like, in breakout rooms, I've been in a lot of breakout rooms where nothing happened, and these are like real breakout rooms. These are like some real ideas and thoughts broke out in the breakout rooms.
Yeah.
Mindy, how do we do this? There's all this beautiful stuff going by on our screen here.
It is. Okay. Laura, following the ideas of us being passionate about life, I reflect on how we reconcile with life through our work. Do you want to add something more about that?
Yes. So the comment that Josh said about all of us being passionate about life, I've been reflecting like recently about what I really want to do as a musician. And I've been working with refugees. It's like more than creating community and bringing people together, is how we open the space for them to reconcile with life because they have lost hope. So yes, it's like through that channel, I can see a stronger purpose in my work, like with reconciliation. And I think it applies to many of us.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you. And
yeah.
Cheyenne and Danny are talking about how arts fills the gaps where verbal communication or misunderstanding. Do either one of you want to talk about that? Cheyenne was responding to Danny, but
I just quoted what Cheyenne said in the group because it was so good. So I invite her to answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think, regardless of Odie's joining me today, regardless of what our fields of practice are, arts or non-arts, there's so much of trying to wrap our head around dementia and what that means for people's lives and how we treat people and how we diagnose people and all of those things. But there's so much to understanding that and so much to communicating about that is not verbal. And I feel like, you know, the arts is the medium that we can, the media that we can use to fill in those gaps of the understanding of what it is to live a life with dementia, or to
or maybe even without dementia. Like I guess that we all have experiences in our lives that are not plausible to be verbalized, or that, I mean, even though we think in words, we don't think in colors or sounds. But we can experience those too, and those are parts of our lives, and how art can be the bridge between one and the other thing. Yeah, that's something that we can pay attention to and develop also.
Phenomenal. Thank you. I have Maritza, if Maritza's on, we talk about how the art people from GBHI change and open the minds of people with clinical and research background.
I
Do you
can
want
talk all about Maritza because Maritza and I were like brother and sisters, right? We were,
Hi, Maritza.
yeah. Hola, Maritza. Nice that you're here. Qué bueno verte. So Maritza is a neurologist and I'm a photographer, and we were the first two Peruvians to be accepted into GBHI. We didn't know anything. And we are, I think, an example of collaboration. We work very closely together and we help each other out a lot. I wouldn't be the photographer that I am now without Maritza's input on science and understanding of the concepts of dementia. And we continue to do so thanks to the Atlantic Institute. And I think, I mean, if I can say something is pair up, like find find somebody within that you can work with, I wouldn't want to work with another photographer, right? Like I'm working with a scientist, and that informs my work. I've grown as a person, as a photographer, thanks to the knowledge of Maritza. And I think, I don't know, maybe Maritza, you will want to say something. I don't want to say what you learned.
Maritza would be at our table sometimes at the Sandler.
Maritza will be in our table sometimes.
We would sit around, and Maritza, I don't know if you care to jump on or talk about your background and
Yeah. Hello, everybody, wherever you are. My name is Maritza Pintado. Yes, I was part of the 2018 cohort. I was based in San Francisco. Yes, I am a neurologist. Since we start our training in GBHI, I met Alex there, and we started to work together. And how we condense our knowledge was like almost magical, because we were helping each other. Alex was really, and seriously, he's like my brother, because we started to work together and trying to understand first our country from different kind of points of view. Alex from the photography, and also by my part, being a person who grew up in a rural community in a different kind of background, and everything different. We started to work together and trying to show our knowledge, showing pictures, images, beautiful photos, and also knowledge, and condensing everything. Also with Sergio Lanata, more knowledge about dementia. We started to work together, and we experiment since that we could do more if we are working together. So now, traveling across the country, visiting rural communities, working with people from the land, I really appreciate how fortunate I am to have people like Alex around me, like Cindy and everybody there, because you are really humans. You have a big heart, like looking for persons, really seeing persons. Usually clinicians, sorry about that, usually clinicians, we are really focused on the disease, treatment, and research, right? But we, as humans, we are more than that. We can't forget that we also are humans, and the arts are into us. We can dance, we can play, we can paint, we can do everything. Instead, we are, if we are neurologists or psychiatrists or whatever. So thank you to be there, surrounding us, and to remembering us that every time we contribute to each other's. Seriously, it has been a beautiful way how we could contribute and work together. Thank you for everything, seriously.
Wow. Thank you, Maritza. I don't know. Do we have any final comments before we turn over to Nick? It's hard to follow that.
I'm just so happy to see Maritza, to see Alex, and to be part of, to have been invited. I'm just honored to have been part of this experience.
Yes.
Today, I just think it's an extension of the privilege of being part of this community, or it's part of that. And thank you for joining, for having me here, and thanks everyone for being with us. It's I wish this could go on and on, but I know it has to wrap up.
Yeah. I think just a final reflection on the arts in general, all of us that are in the arts, all the arts in general, we might not change the world, but I think definitely the arts can change the minds of people, that can change the world. So that's how I feel. That's what keeps me going.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Josh and Alex. Nick, we're going to turn it over to you to wrap up.
Thank you so much, Mindy, and thank you, all of you. I mean, it's not an easy job to be the last word here for your final 3 or 4 minutes. I have a notebook scrawled here from this session full of axioms and wonderful phrases and elements and things that I'll be picking through for a little while, I'd say. What I suppose I want to say, just as an outside observer, sort of joining GBHI just this year and with an arts and health remit to think through, is really something that has emerged for me is the power of the community. And as I was thinking about a lot of this having come up in the conversation, I think I might have distilled the conversation into 4 C's for myself. So I'm going to kind of tick off each of these and think through how they might work. The first is the ingredient of challenge. What I see in the work, both the medium that you're choosing, the photography, the narration, these are inherently challenging media by themselves before we even get to the subject of brain health or the subject of dementia or the context of science. By themselves, they pose hurdles. And so while they might be a passion for an individual, to try to bring them into that space is to use a material to confront even more a major challenge, a social challenge, a global challenge. And people speak of individual challenge in the breakout rooms, the feeling of being overwhelmed or being out of their depth. And yet that moment, that vulnerable moment, is a creative one as well. This is where creativity can begin to help us to bridge from that challenge. The second thought I had is about complexity, because obviously the problem itself, the question of dementia, the question of brain health, incredible complexity in this problem. And I was interested in the comment, I think it was Laura, mentioning that art can sometimes simplify the question, that art is a way to cut to the heart of the matter. And I think it's a dialectic, actually. It's one of those words, like the word pairs that you had on the opening poster, because I think art can in some ways simplify, but on the other hand, it can express really complex emotions in ways that the words or the data may not be able to. So it sort of does both. For me, it's a simple thing that detonates a complex chain of events on the inside, and that link between simplicity, complexity is operating in a lot of the art that I see in both Alex's work and Josh's work. Collaboration, I think, is a central element that emerges here. The idea that we need to bridge between art and science, but also among ourselves, that these types of conversations might unleash some of that creative energy, which is in the space. And finally, I suppose we should reflect on the way that all of these elements, the challenges, the complexities, and the collaborations result in a community, result in a space that opens to different practices, different voices, different backgrounds. And so I think there's something very surprising and special and unique going on here, and that you are both just emblematic expressions of this, and that in the conversation you hear that response and the power of that potential there. So our fifth C of kind of creativity and creation coming out of that, I hope, is something that we can continue to drive forward as a major agenda item with GBHI and with all of you who are here. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Well,
Thank you all.